Town Hall. Welcome everyone to our National Town Hall at Brock.vote, where we are broadcasting to several different places through Facebook Live. We welcome all of you guys. You know, this is one of the most critical town halls that I think we've done. As someone that represents a multiracial background, I'm definitely proud of my Cherokee heritage and was so blessed to meet Phyllis Young, an elder of Standing Rock and the Dakota tribe. A former tribal council member at Standing Rock, and it was an honor to meet her just last week, where we got to spend some time on the reservation rock and learning so much about the real critical needs of our Indigenous relatives. And so it is awesome to have you all come and join us to talk about some really important facts that is rare for us to have access to. The Dakota Pipeline is a huge conversation, but it's affecting people's lives today. So we're going to get into that. But what's also key is for us to understand what's really needed. What's the real history? What can we do to begin to engage in a way that really makes the most sense for all of us, especially considering where we're at with the pandemic. Over 400 years ago today, the Mayflower had set sail for the Americas. Popular history states that the passengers were pilgrims, fleeing religious persecution, overcoming adversity, and eventually celebrating the first Thanksgiving. What popular history doesn't tell us is the lasting adverse impact that this event has had on North American Indigenous cultures through today. It is said that the lowest form of knowledge is opinion. That means a lot when I think about it. And in that, it doesn't require one to be accountable. Conversely, the highest form of knowledge is empathy, as it requires us to remove our egos from the equation and view the world from another's perspective. Our discussion today isn't meant only to highlight the wrongs, but to provide the framework for an accounting with the intent of making our great nation truly inclusive of all cultures. It is such an honor to be greeted and to see you, Phyllis. Thank you so much. And I see Brock is joined us as well.
I will be there in the studio with you. New York traffic basically was non-existent for the last 5 or 6 months, and it decided to pop up today of all days. So please forgive me for not being at my destination on time, but I am here, and I'll mostly be on mute until I get up the elevator. But I wanted to make sure, punctuality is important, and I'm so honored to be here with both of you and to discuss such an important issue of kind of our beginnings.
Right. Thank you so much, Brock. Okay, so you know what? Let's start with this one question, Phyllis. This has been a journey that we've all experienced right now as it relates to COVID in its impact on so many different communities, but especially our Indigenous relatives. I'd love for you to kind of share, how are you doing currently, at Standing Rock? What's going on there? And then let's begin to get in some of the Q&A that we've prepared.
We're in survival mode as usual. We're dealing with life and death along with our routine daily lives. We lost two elders in one community last night. So one from the virus and one not. So we're, we have those survival that we're accustomed to. So we're moving right along, burying our dead. We've mastered a social grace about death. And so unfortunately, we move forward and deal with the virus. We think we're fortunate because we have some governance that we wear masks, we take precautions, we do stay home. So we are making rules for ourselves, but no one knows the symptoms that are collective to any group for the virus. So we're surviving.
What is population, Phyllis? What's the population currently on Standing Rock today?
We are 8,000 members of about almost 20,000 members who live we straddle the border of North and South Dakota. And so we have 3 communities on the North Dakota side and 5 communities on the South Dakota side, but roughly 8,000 members of Standing Rock reside here.
Reside there. Okay. So I want us to go back now to talking about some of the history. When I was a little girl, I had heard about the 500 treaties, and the history was very warped, in my opinion. And I couldn't really make the connection, for what truly was the Native American history that exists in this country. And so I want to go back to those 500 treaties, just at the very beginning, right? So can you tell us about what 500 treaties were broken between the federal government and the Indigenous community?
Those are specific to each nation that was here. And we, as Lakota Dakota, have 33 treaties with the United States government. We have more treaties than any other group in the United States. Beginning in 1805 at Port Sandusky, Ohio, and with Officer Pike, and until 1868. So we have 33 of them, and that represents about 90 million acres of land. So we have continuing rights derived from those treaties. We also have the UN, who has completed a 15-year study on the status of treaties, which are considered international documents that give all the credence to the Vienna Convention 62 that applies to the treaties that are in fact upheld by Attorney General in 1823, that we are still independent nations, and we still retain those provisos that are in the treaties.
Okay. And, a lot of people who are just hearing about this are trying to understand whether or not we've broken those treaties. Can you say outright whether the United States government has actually honored those treaties or broken those treaties?
The treaties are broken. I will speak for my own people, what I was up against, and there are 5 steps to the treaty process in international law and the tenets that apply. And that's, you name the breach, you name the misconduct first. And the misconduct is with the president's office or the White House. And for that misconduct is to approve a permit to go through our homelands, when one of the provisos is that no one will go through our territory. So you have the breach, which you have to name the crime, and that is violation of several provisos that have occurred at Standing Rock with the no DAPO. And so you have reparations that have been filed for, and then you have negotiated language that you put forward, and then you go back to the original status because the treaty has been breached. So we declare the 1851 treaty boundaries, which are by judicial decree for all the areas that apply for our treaties.
Uh-oh.
There you are, Phyllis. There you are. Can you repeat, if you don't mind, that last part? Because I think it's very important for people to hear. And Brock is here. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Brock.
Hello, hello.
So there's a five-step, 5 steps that you go through for the treaty, the recognition. We spent 15 years at the UN facilitating a treaty study and acknowledgement by the Vienna Convention that applies to international principles of law for treaties. So you have the misconduct, you have the breach, the crime, reparations. If nothing is met, then all above are suspended, and you return to your original boundaries and provisions of the treaty, which is 1851 treaty, the boundaries all the way to Port Sandusky, Ohio.
That's a piece of history. I don't think people, and not even history, it's current legislation that people are not as familiar with at all. And what do you think we're doing to educate our young and those that are in position to needing to know this information? What are we doing to educate people?
We're creating a website specifically on a treaty commission. We have filed, we have been in the court system. The Constitution was violated in 1823 with Johnson versus McIntosh, crossing the Vatican papal bulls into the federal Indian law and violating the church and state. And so there are 11 Supreme Court cases that use the doctrine of discovery and those papal bulls to apply to property, that we have no property rights because we are not Christian, and because we are wandering beasts, you name it, in the papal bulls. So we are in the federal court system. We are creating our own Indigenous court system based from our own. We have a court here, which was originally a CFR court, which was federal regulations, but we are creating an Indigenous court. We have it drafted, and we declared at the camp that and it's a 17-page document where we do not acknowledge the 11 Supreme Court cases, that Congress has plenary power over us, that that we are not property owners. We defied that, and there were over 300 religious people who sectors that burned the doctrine of discovery at the camp. So two of them were arrested. They're all pastors and Christians in the church. So politically, we're at survival level. We're at ground zero for survival, and we have to move aggressively in the courts. Just now, presently, Red Fawn was released from prison after almost 4 years. After 4 years, the judge has ruled that the civil rights violations will go forward for over 200 people that were oppressed by the police. The ones who were injured, Susie, who lost her eye from the police, and Sophia, who lost her arm through the police violence. So history has not been told about Sitting Bull being murdered by 40 policemen. So it has been part of our lives that we were the predecessor sovereign. We were also the predecessor criminals that were made criminals by act of Congress. So we defy all of that. We're creating our own systems of justice. We have no further choice to create balance and equality for ourselves.
Have we dug deep into the doctrine of discovery yet? Because I only missed
Not
the
as
opening.
deep- yeah,
So
no, not at all. Go ahead, yeah.
Phyllis, I know you just mentioned
Yeah.
this a few times, but I view this in the future. You know, I look at systems and I see symptoms as like the leaves on a tree. But as a systems designer, I go from the symptoms to the branches to the trunk and ultimately to the root. And in a lot of ways, I view the doctrine of discovery as sort of the original sin. And this is a document for all those that want to know the truth and want to understand how we've gotten here. It's very important to understand this document. It was written in 1493 by the Pope for the conquistadors. It basically said that if you're a white Christian male, you're free to take everything you want. And it's, I know it was mentioned, I just want to make sure that people really understand the significance. It's worth, a Google search, because if you really want to know how we got here, you got to go all the way back to the beginning if we want to heal. And so from my perspective, and why I'm always so honored to have a conversation like this is, I think that for this nation to heal, like, our traumas, and there's a lot of healing needed, we have to go back
To the roots.
to the roots. We have to go back to the beginning, and we have to acknowledge, these things. Sadly, we've largely been lied to. History is his story, and it's been written by the victors. And as kids, we've not been taught the truth. And for us to heal as a nation, we have to start with acknowledging the truth, which means going back to the beginning, which starts with the indigenous people of, the Caribbean, North, Central, and South America, and then it eventually leads to Africa, and we're going to have to go through it. And the truth hurts. The truth hurts because we've done a bunch of things that, that are really traumatic. We've done some horrible things, but if we want to heal as a nation, we have to acknowledge the past, and then in that process, come together to sit down and understand that we all have a voice and that we all deserve a seat at this table so that we can talk about the present and then collectively find a path forward into the future together. And so I think that this is some of the most important stuff that we have to undergo as a nation. And it's such an honor and a privilege to be here with both of you as we do, I think, this incredible work if we want to build an America that we're all proud of. We have to redefine what it is to be an American. And it's other things like in our Constitution, when and Phyllis said this, and I want to emphasize this. When it says we the people, it doesn't mean all the people. As Phyllis noted, that the indigenous were, I think the word you used, beasts, were not human. And in our Constitution and in our amendments today, this continues to be true. Phyllis, are the indigenous in our Constitution and amendments today, are they It doesn't mean all the people when we say we the people.
We are not part of the U.S. Constitution. We are not. We're not subject. Although we file under Fifth Amendment in the past, but when the Pinta, the Nina, and the Santa Maria came to port with Columbus, it doesn't tell that's a cute little story that's part of history, but it doesn't tell that the 5 papal bulls were brought by him. He was a prolific slave trader in Portugal before he came to Americas. But the doctrine of discovery applies to Asia, to Africa, and to North and South America. So it justified and validated slavery in Africa. Mm-hmm. So when they came to the United States, long story short, they brought the papal bulls where they said we were subhuman, and for the native people, for us specifically Dakota and Lakota, I know my history. When Isaac Stevens wrote that first treaty in 1805 for the Lakotas, he put in that we were 2/3 human and 1/3 animal, so that even the appropriations for many, many decades were 2/3 in appropriation. So we've never been subject to the full appropriations for Indian Health Service, for education. So even today, we just had Yakima in the Supreme Court, where the doctrine is referenced for the first time, is acknowledged. Now, when you just had the Oklahoma decision a month ago, they know how contentious this issue is for us now, and that we have voiced it, and we have declared that we're not going to adhere to the Supreme Court cases. They are now using weasel words, we said, because they are now going around. They're not saying doctrine of discovery, they're saying property. Well, it has an issue with property rights. And so there are 11 Supreme Court cases that are that use the doctrine of discovery legal precedent. So that has been used. We defy all 11 of those Supreme Court cases. But we're also looking forward to a summit sponsored by the National Council of Churches, the World Council of Churches, where we petitioned South Africa, Bishop Tutu, to petition for an audience. He did, through Father Michael, get a full audience, and we're petitioning the Pope for to revoke the doctrine, the papal bulls, the 5 of them. So we are learning what each one says, and we're countering it. So we're telling kids that come here from all over America, and there's classes that come, and we tell them, look in the Constitution for that little foreign phrase in there, and what does it say? And you'll find it. Look in the court cases, you'll find it. It's written there. It's all documented by government records. So it's not our speculation or anything like that. It's history.
Phyllis, it seems like we have a little bit of an issue. We don't know if it's on your end.
Well, so I'll just add I think a point for every American. Well, it's for everyone in general, but when we talk about our Constitution, and when we talk about, the America that we want to live in, when we say we the people, it should really mean all the people. We want an inclusive America that believes that we all have equal rights under the law.
It gets me every time when Brock says this. It's like, of course, duh, but that's not been the case, and we're still in 2020 facing these kinds of conversations. Phyllis, I think we have you back. Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect. So I want to go into, I'm so glad you talked about that, Brock. One of the key things I really want to hear from you on, Phyllis, is the damage has been done. It's been done through countless generations. If there was any path forward whatsoever, what would that look like from your perspective? If there was any healing to be done, what would be those first steps that would need to be taken?
We have filed in the court system 10 lawsuits in December of 2018 for the return of the land, for the rental and lease of the property from the river, the water. We are the senior water rights holder of the Missouri River. Standing Rock, not Oceti Shakoi. I guess you would say all of us, but we have filed everything in the court system, and what we don't need appropriations, we don't need congressional handouts, we don't need welfare. The government has taken our land and created a welfare state, which is the worst thing they've ever done to us. So I would like acknowledgement of the treaty status, to have, and I will never ever forget my hero in my lifetime, because I was a child when they flooded my homeland. We lost 167 homes on Standing Rock to the flood, but we never received compensation for our homes. And when we petitioned the Congress, we went to the late great senator from North Dakota, Quentin Burdick. He introduced legislation for us, and he created Article 11 of 1868 Treaty, Proviso 6, which says when you cross the territory of Indian country, there must be a commission established, including a headman of the tribe, to sit down and negotiate trespass and damages. And he did that. He created, granted it was advisory committee, granted it was not 5 commissioners, but he initiated a commission, a committee, advisory committee, to look at the losses, and we went after additional compensation. He set up a corpus of $90.6 million that we accessed the interest off of. So we only want the revenue derived from our property. We had a construction methodology, was upheld by the Supreme Court in Pelton, and we own the hydropower. And the Army Corps has all the data and the records, and Standing Rock has about $2 billion that is there. It's used by America for everything else. We don't need to stand in line for appropriations for anything. We don't need a welfare handout. We only need the revenue derived from our properties, and that would take care of us financially. We would not have to petition anybody for anything and live on our land. We only want to be left alone, to live in peace on our land that is governed by the treaties, which are the supreme law of the land. So my rallying cry has always been, if America is still a republic and it's still governed by a constitution, and the treaties are the supreme law of the land, we will prevail. We will prevail.
As someone that is rapidly becoming familiar, with the specific issues at Standing Rock, it's hard to argue with that.
Mhm.
As someone that believes that our word matters, our commitments matter, our Constitution matters, our treaties matter. I mean, the fact that you're saying we're not looking for handouts, we're not looking to stand in line for that. All we want is the revenues
Right.
derived from our property under the agreements that we have. I have a hard time understanding the argument against such a thing. I can't really comprehend of one. And so I'm curious, what is preventing our government from honoring that commitment? What has been the response?
We have had the 3 last senators in North Dakota introduce just compensation package prepared by our own member who graduated from Princeton in economics, and he was qualified and validated by the General Accounting Office for the claims that we submitted. And so that legislation was introduced from 2005 and or as far back as 1980 by Senator Conrad, by Senator Dorgan, and even at the tail end of 2015 by Senator Heitkamp. So introduced by the senators for claims and for all the political reasons. The United States Treasury was broke, but we own the dams from the construction methodology, from the legal, from the Supreme Court case. So we are owed 4.99 billion Ocheti Shakoi, manifest destiny. So the retribution is still prevalent in withholding, and forcing us to live in poverty. And we're not going to take it anymore. We are going to embrace prosperity at all costs.
Oh, so which entity? What entity specifically in the U.S. government, or in the Dakotas? What is the entity that is responsible for that liability? Who is supposed to write that check?
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
The one who granted the permit to the depot.
And so I assume they know about this, call it liability, right? This, call it obligation.
Absolutely.
And so they're saying that it's the Treasury Department doesn't have the money. They're basically blaming another division of government for their inability to pay.
Yes, but we know now that all the appropriations in defense that have gone into the war, there is money in defense. So we'll take it from the defense. Senator Heitkamp at the last, trying to redeem herself because she was for the oil companies, she introduced legislation for a school in Cannonball. There's a new school there. That was her last ditch effort to keep her seat for us. And she also introduced legislation for the return of the land, which she went out of office before that could be completed. So it can be done by good people, but when you have the chairman of the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs who owns 67 oil wells in the Bakken in North Dakota, and 14 of them are named after your Dakota band Wahpeton, one of our council fires, that's a conflict of interest. And so we were supposed to have a congressional hearing on April 22nd, and I was supposed to testify, but the coronavirus happened in the middle of March. So we did not get to that congressional hearing for all of this, but we have filed 10 lawsuits for the mineral rights in the river at $7 per acre foot for all of the landowners. That's $55 million for that. For the riverbed, 20,000 acres. These are all leases. Army Corps does not own the river. Article 2 of the 1868 treaty, we own, I'm sorry I have to say it in American words, we own the property of the East Bank of the Missouri River, according to the treaty. And so we fought that. We're in court right now with, as I said, the civil rights cases are going forward. We're fighting with Tiger Swan, who was the security that zigged the dogs on us in the name of the military. It's treason for the military to take action against us as citizens of the United States. We are dual citizens. We hold our own Lakota citizenship, but we are Americans, and we're subject to all the equal opportunities and all of the freedoms that are guaranteed under that. So that's what we seek.
So a couple of things I want to add to that, and a question. I bring this up outside of the context of this because I think it's an important reminder for Americans to know this. We often talk about resource problems, like where's the money going to come from, you know, and a lot of people don't know where money comes from, and that's something I'm eager and not in this, right, to educate. We don't have a resource problem in this country. We are the wealthiest nation in the world. We have a resource allocation problem. We may have some efficiency problems. We may have some accountability problems. We may even have, in some cases, some credibility or legitimacy problems. You know, our keeping our word, right, is an important thing. If in life, if your friends don't keep their word, they're probably not going to be your friends much longer. If your colleagues don't keep their word, they're probably not going to work with you for much longer.
And we don't raise our children like that.
We don't, and so I think it's very important that you know, the U.S., because of its status in the world, can get away with a lot of things. But I think it's really important that America leads by example. That America leads by example, and it's, you know, kind of going through every one of these issues, and I look forward to, you know, double clicking on all of them. But one of the things that you mentioned in terms of dual citizens, so I'm a resident of Puerto Rico, and as someone that lives in Puerto Rico, I'm not allowed to vote, and this is something that people, you know, generally don't know, and it's worth noting. But I can run for president, interestingly enough, and I know it's on our list of questions. But I think that because of this, it's a topic that is discussed internally and something that we're aware of. I'm curious about voting, and, you know, historically how, you know, the Native Americans or the Indigenous of the Dakotas and Lakotas, you know, do they show up to vote? How have they been voting? I'd love to just understand a little bit about that. How are the Indigenous representing themselves?
I think we were fantastic in the last election because 94% of our people voted. But we were challenged. So don't challenge us, because we challenge back. And what they did was we elected the first woman senator in the state of North Dakota. We had a lot to do with it. We mobilized our vote. We have 5 tribal nations in the state of North Dakota. And in 1960, we voted, as I stated, I always state, we voted for Senator Quentin Burdick, and he was losing by 3,000 votes. And Standing Rock's vote was the last to be counted. And when that happened, he won by 1,000 votes. He never forgot. He never forgot us. And so we made a difference. And so when Heidi Heidkamp ran as a woman, my family were my grandchildren. We all went door to door. We wrote our own my grandchildren wrote vote in our own handwriting, our own papers, and we put it in the little school papers. Everybody campaigned, and she won. And it was the first time I had ever gone to a victory. gathering for a senator. And so we have taken our voting seriously, our campaigns, our door-to-door. We're very proud of that history, and we made a difference. We elected her, and then we got a backlash from the North Dakota State Legislature because we messed with the old guard. And so they introduced 3 pieces of legislation over that time, and they required Standing Rock to have street addresses, not post office boxes. So legislature passed that. We enlisted the help of the Native American Rights Fund to legally represent us. We were in a lawsuit, and the judge ruled in our favor. We had poll watchers at the last election. We had 3 litigants that were court ordered by the federal district court to be allowed to vote. So we prevailed. We were challenged, and so we prevailed and got out 94% of our people to vote. We had the picture you have of Sitting Bull is a picture of our bus that went to neighborhoods. 10 people got out in each neighborhood and went door to door. We were forced to have new IDs, so we had to invest in getting new IDs with a street address. So there were lines and lines of people for the new IDs. So we're moving forward with more innovative ideas for treaty IDs that will give us and guarantee freedom. So we're excited about doing a phone banking campaign because we don't have polls here anymore because it's mail-in voting. So we have to go with the flow. And as I told the NoDAPL when they came, we will put our young people on their horses, and we will do everything that we can in our spirit to defeat you. And I say that with the voting, we will put our young people on their horses, and the warriors will make the difference. And that's picking up that computer, picking up that phone, using that electric current to get the voice out. However we have to do it, because we do not have polls. We don't have sight. But the Native American Voting Rights Act, we're petitioning Congress to allow us that freedom to utilize our townships as poll places in Indian country. So we're aggressive in moving forward. We have 6 weeks left. We're hiring 50 phone bankers and getting on the phone. And as remote as we are, we have to use our donations for getting gas to bring them 30 miles from the north and 20 miles from the south to get to one poll. So, but we'll go with the flow. We've always adapted. We've always adopted, and we go forward aggressively to ensure that our vote is in place by the end of 6 weeks. We will
What an amazing thing to hear. And again, a reminder to everyone watching now and in the future, 94% voter turnout. 40% of the eligible voters in this country are not showing up to vote. Remember, the future is going to happen to you or with you. And let this be a reminder to get out there and always rock the vote. Be part of the process. Participate.
Yeah.
Your voice matters. Your voice counts. Make it heard. So I want to take us to the thing that I think probably most Americans probably had never heard of Standing Rock until recently, because of all of the solidarity and the protest and the standing up around the Dakota Access and Keystone pipelines. And so, Phyllis, you played such an important role in all of this. Can you tell us what that was all about and what you did and what the outcome has been, you know, the many battles and the status of, call it, the war right now?
It's a long haul. It was, we've always fought against the invasion, the industrialization, the development coming into our homeland. And being in a strategic area in treaty territory where we have 107 miles of shoreline. Cheyenne River has over 200. So we don't see the river as our property. It's part of Mother Earth and our relationship to her and sustaining her so we can sustain ourselves. And we have balance. And I want to thank you, Brock, for your concepts and for your belief, because you practice and you preach about not being against anyone, but being with everyone. So I look at our own belief systems that are balance and consensus, that it's not about dehumanizing or not about dominance. It's not about dominating anyone. We want to live in peace. Dakota means friend or ally. And O Dakota means peace. That's who we are. So we have fought the invasion, and our territory has been diminished by legislative fiat, by court decision. We have fought it all. We have a history of resistance. We are the only people in the world who has defeated the United States militarily. Standing Rock. We hold the flag from 1876. We stopped the expansion, the removal of our people to New Mexico. So we know who we are. We have suffered great retribution with the Wounded Knee Massacre, with the hanging of 38 at Mankato, who were our chiefs. We have faced the prohibition of our spirituality from 1910 to 1978. We have fought against the Major Crimes Act, which violates the Bad Man Clause of 1868 treaty, where the government said they would take care of the bad man, take care of the white man, and they created the Major Crimes Act. So that criminalized all of us. And what happens is we are made hostiles. So in the 1920s, we were declared hostile. So we could not file any claims against the government. We lost the status. Now Bannon has declared us as terrorists. So that's a status. It's a legal title status that subjects us to, that prohibits us from accessing the rights and the freedoms to petition for wrongdoings. And so that stopped us for decades. But President Obama declared that we were no longer hostiles. And so now Bannon has declared us terrorists. So we're researching on what that prohibition will be as terrorists. We don't have the rights entitled to us. So we're fighting executive policy. We're fighting in the court system to stop. This is not. This is my life struggle and our people. So we were plaintiffs against Union Carbide in 1980. We stopped it. They had their big explosion in Bhopal, and we stopped the Dakota Pipeline, which was a water line and a coal slurry. We were plaintiffs in 1980. So we were successful in those endeavors. And when you have that kind of success, kind of gives you the energy to keep going. And so now our children and our grandchildren are subjected. Our lives have always been to resist the encroachment of our territory. We only want to live in peace and be accorded all of the freedoms and the equality that America has to offer. We allowed all people, we fought, but we allowed for times for people to come here and prosper and to live in dignity. And we always ask that we be allowed to be accorded that dignity.
Well, you've had a lot of success in standing up for what you believe. I know you've mentioned it, but if you could talk a moment about Sitting Bull, Russell Means, and we have you present. The Lakota and Dakota people have actually been successful repeatedly, arguably against all odds. It might be worth just touching on, the history of Sitting Bull briefly, and Russell Means for those that are not familiar with those that succeeded.
I think it's the human partnerships that have really made an impact on the lives of all of us. When people came here, Sitting Bull was a great strategist. He sought the refuge of the Queen and fled to Canada. So we have 8 communities in Canada of descendants of our people. So we represent, we're still surviving in 14 reservations in the United States. We're still in a 5-state area. So I believe the human partnerships in 1980, it was not just the Lakota who defeated Union Carbide and the pipeline. It was, we formed the Cowboys and Indians Alliance. So at Ground Zero in South Dakota, it was all the peace and justice Cowboys who wanted the same for us to live in peace. And so over the years, the great partnerships in North Dakota, the diplomats that we made partners with that understood our language. And so, yes, we've had sweet victory. The veterans who came, my grandfather's code talker, my uncles all were wounded combat Purple Heart recipients in the military. That's who we are. Standing Rock is military. Our grandfathers promoted education. We have educated people. We have a brightness amongst ourselves. We're taking back our language. We're creating food security. We're looking at building homes and growing hemp. So we have a number of partners who have come that are not, we are not exclusive to ourselves. We have a world view with universal standards. We are a pluralistic society, and we're very egalitarian society, although we promoting women. We are matriarchs. We have Wope. Wope is female, and it's the law. It's the natural law of our people. And egalitarian, there are headmen who want to determine that their council fire is going to be a patriarch. And based on the headmen who hold the staff, we have distinct societies for men and women. So we have an equality that's based on balance and consensus. And we think we have a beautiful culture. We have a lot to offer America, and we think that America is ready for us. We think that they want the beauty of our language when you interpret it. We don't have prohibitive language that says, do not do this. It says, treat everyone alike. And
I think it's.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I know, I was going to say amen and amen.
I'm here to learn from you, and so grateful, that we were just able to be in North Dakota with you last week. And so I just want to highlight the patriotic service that your family did in our U.S. military. I don't want that to be lost on anyone. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just a
major.
note that, we're in this together, and the beauty and the culture that the Lakota and the Dakota have to offer, as well as the indigenous of all of the Americas and the world, quite frankly. And so one question for all of us that are, call it, willing to stand with you, what can we do to serve or to assist you? What would be the call to action for those of us that are prepared to stand? What can we do? How can we help? How can we serve?
I did something in 2007 after the UN work for 20 years, and that was petition the State Department for acknowledgement of our treaty status. And on the way there, we created the website, and it crashed. They said, "Oh, our website crashed," and I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And they said, "That means that there was too many people on it. There were 750,000 people on it, and the majority were Americans." And so from that day forward, I had my hope in America. I had to own America. I had to claim it and acknowledge that my grandfathers and my uncles, my fathers, my brother, everyone had their part in fighting for the freedom. And I had the freedom to speak because they fought for that. So I had to own America. And so it's incumbent upon us to create a new America based on the true values and principles of democracy at the highest level. We have an obligation to make that, not only for me, but for coexistence more so ever in this history of time. It has to be now. We owe it to our grandchildren, all of us. We're no different than each other, than the human family. That was the threshold. That was the message at Ocheti Shakoi. That now I was a spokesperson, not just for me, not just for the women, but for humanity, human life, the coexistence. And we, as people, our knowledge is, or our belief system, there is no ending. We only have a beginning, and that is the circle. The circle only has a beginning, and that's how we believe. So we have no end of the world thoughts, that this is a new beginning, and we have to go forward. We have to acknowledge that circle that's in Mother Nature, in the hurricane. We're the circle in the wind. We are the female stepping up now. We're in the age of divine women. We are in the age of Aquarius, along with the Greeks. We're in sync with other peoples of the world. So we move forward as the human race, and that it's about our children and our grandchildren. So legislative action, petition, support the Native American Voting Rights Act at every level. Support the revoking of the papal bulls. We went to the United Nations in 1977, and we declared that we are the red race at the table, that we are a race of people. We are the most beautiful people in the world. We have the most beautiful spiritual language, the interpretations. If you know them, you practice them, you live them, you love them. So I think that we want the Missouri River to be clean It's not just for us, it's for 20 million Americans who use that river for drinking water. So what is good for us is good for you. We are in the front lines, we are in the forefront, but that's who we are. We are Sitting Bull's people. We are Hunkpapa, horn of the buffalo. So we are the vanguard of our nation, and we are the Ihunktawa, the people on the edge. And so we are patriots. We own America. We're taking it back, and we'll help develop into a true place. There's nothing left to pilfer, nothing left to take. We all have to give what we have in the best of our human interest, our human love for each other. So thank you. I'll end my talk there.
Well, I've got one last question because in the purpose of full disclosure,
Okay.
Wakia, if you would be so kind, what is Wakia and why would I bring that up?
That's incredible. I said we have universal standards. We have the Wakia Oyate are the most powerful beings in the universe. That's the snow, the rain, the thunder, the lightning, all of what you know as Mother Nature. And so we're developing solar with the sun, the energy, the natural energies that come from the universe don't have a dollar tag on them. So we're developing solar for our housing. We have a wind, we're developing the wind, and she's the female. The Wakia Oyate are the thunder beings. They're the gods of our people. And the wind is the female. And she does not operate by the rules of any man. She has her own spirit. She's the mischievous one. She likes to play. She's the female. And she dictates the circle that comes with the storms as you know them. So Wakia Oyate, we call them the thunder beings. There are the people in the universe. But we're making partnerships with them. And so we have to create a resonance factor for that partnership. And that's the electricity current derived from the water. And human beings are all born in that water. And so the electric current that we're receiving comes from the solar, from the sun. So we're all interconnected. But the Wakia are the most powerful in the universe. And we have to treat them with respect and dignity and caution.
Well, I guess on that note,
I was going to say, wow, especially to have known that Brock has gone through the honor of the adoption with that name is really, really very important to note and very powerful. On behalf of all of us, Phyllis, it has been such a treat, such an honor to have you come and speak with us today. We wish you nothing but the best. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
thank you, Phyllis. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Brock.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.
Great.
Thank you.
All.
Blessings.
Okay, blessings.
Many blessings.